Hey y'all, my name's Andrew. I'm from Texas, and I'm here to tell you that everything you know about the pecan is wrong. That's a little hyperbolic. What I mean to say is there's a lot about the pecan that is maybe more complicated than it seems. And since it's Thanksgiving time when I'm recording this, let's dig in to this veritable pie of nutty. Let's get started. So first things first. Oh my goodness. First things first. This guy here is not a nut, not biologically at least. Culinarily, he's definitely a nut, a very tasty one, nutritious, high in healthy fats, crunchy, buttery, a good texture, and kind of a nice taste. Not as bitter as its cousins, the walnuts or the hickory nuts. All around, a pretty great nut. One indigenous to the United States, stretches all the way up from present-day Illinois down the Mississippi River and then into Louisiana and into Texas and now over into New Mexico and now even over into Georgia. And we'll get how that was made possible later. But anyway, it's a great little nut, but it's not actually a nut. It's a fruit, or a drupe, they're called. It's almost like a stone fruit. This is like the I don't know, the stone inside the fruit maybe, or the fruit inside the stone. I don't know. But anyway, a pecan is very easy to identify as a tree. It's got these sort of curved teardrop shaped leaves and they're kind of serrated on the edges. They turn a beautiful kind of orangey yellow in the fall, and the rest of the time they're a very verdant, bright green. Mm. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm. 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 We love a pecan, don't we, folks? Mm. They said almonds should have been the nut. I said no. It's always got to be the pecan. Mm. Now, of course, the indigenous people of what is now the United States knew about pecans, or as we would call them today, wild pecans. They're delicious. They can keep for a pretty good amount of time, and you can turn them into lots of stuff that we will briefly discuss in this video, although this isn't entirely a culinary-based video. And of course, they are especially popular in one specific place where the market has really exploded over the last 20 years. This is a place that just loves pecans. That's right, it's China. China is pecan crazy. Maybe it's because hickory nuts are a traditional part of some Chinese diets, and pecans are a type of hickory nut. But they're very popular in China over the last 20 or so years, since 2008 in particular. They're the biggest export market for pecans, and it's a good thing for the American pecan market because outside of November and December, pecans really, they don't sell that much, which is a shame because, as I say, they're really useful, but they're only useful if we can cultivate them. At least they're useful on a big scale in today's society if we can cultivate them. So how do we do that? So the only reason that you or I or anyone for that matter, whether they're in China or Texas, can go into a store and buy a pecan or a pecan-based product like a pie. So the only reason you're able to do that is thanks to a man named Antoine. And it's just Antoine because we don't know if he had a last name or if he did, what that was. But his name was Antoine. He was a Creole man who was enslaved at the Oak Alley plantation in Louisiana, starting in, I think, the mid 1800s, mid 19th century. And he was a gardener there. And now pecans are not naturally suited to large-scale industrial-type agriculture, the kind of agriculture that helps you fill up supermarkets and make pecan-derived products, for example. There was no way to get enough pecans to really process them at a high rate. And the reason is because they are like apples and oranges. I'm sorry to compare it to those, but it's like them in the sense that you can't really breed sustainable varieties of the fruit. Every tree will produce a slightly different fruit. So if you want the same result every time, you literally have to clone the fruit, the clone the plant. And the way you do that is through grafting, which means like you cut off a part of one plant and you stick it to another plant, and they grow together, and it will create the same fruit in this case. Now, people before had tried to graft. That's hard to say. People before had tried to graft. Prior to this, people had attempted to graft pecans. They had tried to graft them onto walnut trees, which didn't work, and to hickory trees, which worked a little bit better because pecans are hickory trees. But it took Antoine's skill and ingenuity as a gardener to make it work. Eventually, a good variety, a cutting of one pecan tree was taken down to Oak Alley, given to the plantation owner, who then gave it to Antoine. And Antoine very quickly saw success in grafting new varieties. And I've read that this is because he actually connected the roots of different plants, and that made better, more sustainable nut variety. This meant you could have varieties of pecans rather than just whatever wild pecan you got that season and in that place, right? So now we have Pawnee pecans, we have Kiowa pecans, and so on. Someone was bound to make the breakthrough, but in this case, it was made by Antoine when he was enslaved at Oak Alley. He got recognized for this as well. In 1876, the centennial year of the United States, Antoine's pecan won Best in Show at the Philadelphia Exposition World's Fair, kind of a thing. So yeah, that's how we get industrial levels of pecans, thanks to Antoine and the pecan. Antoine pecan. Those kind of rhyme. That's how you remember to say it correctly, like me. So as we now have like varieties of pecans that are sustainable, a lot of people can learn what the indigenous people of North America knew for a long time, which is that pecans can be used lots of ways. Obviously, they're a great snacking nut. Obviously, they're good as you might use in baked goods, any other nut. You can also get an oil from them, a really useful oil. It's kind of light yellow in color, light in viscosity, a little bit like canola oil, but has a really high, what they call smoke point, meaning it burns only at a very high temperature, so you can do cool stuff like fry things, right? Pecans have been eaten in what is now the US for a long time, and the word pecan comes from an Algonquin word, something like pecan, that means any kind of nut that's like so hard that you would have to use like a stone to crack it. But of course, I've seen there's a good trick if you ever have a couple of nuts to crack together. Okay, well, if you ever have two pecans, you can put them in your palms like that. Do your fingers together like a wedge, like a nut cracker, and then crack them against each other. It's kind of like that trick with the bottles. I don't know who's watching this, but you know. So now we can produce pecans at commercial industrial scales. What happens next? So here's a story about a woman who became known as La Pasionaria, or the passionate one, or even like the passion flower, passion vine that grows around here. Her name was Emma Tenayuca, and she was born in San Antonio to Mexican-American parents in 1916. The story goes that as a youth, she would go to the Plaza de Zacate, which is today known as Milam Park, and she would hear like union speakers and syndicalists and anarchists and political left-wing communist types speaking from literal soapboxes. And this made an impression on her. As a high schooler, she joined the League of United Latin American Citizens, LULAC, more on that in another episode. When she was a junior in high school, she witnessed a strike from the all-woman staff at the Fink Cigar Company, the Fink Cigar Company, forgive me. Again, this is when she was a high schooler, and she was so moved by this that she walked the picket line with these striking workers, and she was even arrested. So you're cool, but are you Emma Tenayuca cool? And we haven't even gotten to the coolest parts of her story yet. By the mid-1930s, she's a supporter of the New Deal during the Great Depression, but she goes beyond support for just the Democratic Party, she becomes a communist and she becomes an organizer in the Communist Party of the state of Texas in the United States, as well as joining the Workers' Alliance of America. She became a proper activist and organizer, organizing strikes and letter writing campaigns and other forms of protest. By the late 1930s, Emma is an executive committee member with the Workers' Alliance, and also by the late 1930s, things are getting tense in the pecan shelling industry. You see, 40% of America's pecan crop at the time was shelled in Texas, and half of that was being shelled in San Antonio. And most of the pecan shellers were women, and most were Mexican American. But it wasn't just women. Sometimes it was whole families, including children. And the working conditions for pecan shelling was not great. So at the end of January 1938, Emma Tenayuca and the Workers' Alliance helped organize the Pecan Shellers Union in San Antonio. Yes, there was a Pecan Shellers Union in San Antonio, and they helped organize a strike of more than 12,000 pecan shellers in San Antonio. And the way it worked at the time is like there was a big pecan shelling company, I think it was called Southern, and they would buy a bunch of pecans, and then they would kind of sell the pecans to a contractor, and the contractor would actually shell the finished nut pecan and get the meat out, and then send it back to Southern, and then Southern would sell the finished pecans. I think that's how it worked. It was a 3-month strike, and there were about 400, I think I read 400 shelling operations around San Antonio. Yo mama shells so many pecans, she shells all around San Antonio. I don't think that one's gonna stick, but let me know, Countdown City, if you like that one. And during this 3-month strike, 1,000 workers are arrested. And this is where Emma becomes La Pasionaria, because she's like a speaker, an orator, and the local papers are painting her as something of a radical. As a matter of fact, I found a piece that was going around at the time. I think it was in the Rattler, maybe, which is, I think that's the St. Mary's old newspaper at the time. Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Which basically said, hey, it was a Catholic point of view, and it was saying, hey, I'm all for social justice. I'm a social justice warrior. But if the church doesn't step in to solve some of these social problems, like these poor workers, well, then they're going to turn to dangerous things like this communism that Emma Tenayuca keeps talking about at all these rallies. Eventually, the strike is going to break because management is ready to negotiate a better pay for these workers. But there ended up actually being a problem, and it was caused by pro-worker policies of the New Deal, actually. The New Deal had a complex effect on many different industries. Okay, but it's true. So yeah, at the end of 1938, I believe it was, this new national minimum wage comes into effect. And the problem with the new national minimum wage is the pecan shelling company owners are not going to shell out. Woo! Got him! Anyway, the point is, these owners are cruel and motivated by profit, and they're not going to shell out for these new higher minimum wages. They're not going to pay 12,000 people this new minimum wage. What they're going to do is buy pecan shelling machines. They're gonna automate it. They're gonna bring in automation and replace the workers, and the workers will not have a social safety net to fall back on. So not the greatest ending to the strike, I admit, but it's important to remember that they really did have management over a barrel until the new policy screwed things up. And it also goes to show that if you're going to do things like a minimum wage increase, you have to account for the fact that owners are going to look for cost cutting and find ways to employ fewer people, right? That's always going to be their trick. And unless you just have a robust social safety net, you're always going to be dealing with this real problem of people living in precarity, up and down, and just never having stability in their lives. Anyway, pecans. By the way, just doing the reading for this, I found some other examples of similar strikes by pecan shellers in El Paso and in Fort Worth as well. So, fun fact. Anyway, let's talk about pecan pie. So, I looked through old newspapers to try to find pecan pie recipes going back as far as I could, but the thing is, if you look it up, most people will say that the pecan pie was basically a marketing gimmick invented by a corn syrup company to sell corn syrup, you know, the way Campbell's invents casserole recipes to sell condensed soups. Well, that's true, I guess, maybe, but I kind of imagine someone stumbled upon something similar to this prior to that, but I really couldn't find a recipe that quite did it because everything I saw that said a pecan pie, and most of them had some other ingredient, it made like a proper custard or like a meringue, whereas the pecan pie we know today is not it's not really a custard. It's not quite that. It's more like a gel custard, a sugar custard. You know what I mean? It's just a slightly different, and it requires Karo corn syrup. So Karo syrup comes on the market at the turn of the 20th century, but it's not until the 1920s and 30s when they get this idea to boost syrup sales beyond just drizzling it on pancakes, using it as a syrup substitute. Now you could use it as a baking ingredient. So that's kind of how pecan pies, you know, became a bigger thing, I would say. And over the last century, they've become inextricably linked with the holidays season in the US and especially with Thanksgiving. And of course, we know pecans are a great part of, wait a minute, a great part of Thanksgiving. But I thought Thanksgiving happened in New England and they don't have pecans in New England. Well, here's the thing. The first Thanksgiving back at Plymouth, well, that's a whole thing. And you should read what happened the generation after that with Metacom and King Philip's War. Anyway, that's a whole other thing. Doesn't have to do with Texas. Anyway, that Thanksgiving, they probably ate like, eels and maybe some pumpkin and venison and stuff like that, but probably not pecans because those don't grow over there. But Texas, where pecans do grow, has a claim to an earlier Thanksgiving, a first Thanksgiving, and in fact, it claims two different Thanksgivings. So in 1598, a Spanish conquistador named Juan de Oñate is given some lands in what is today New Mexico, up by Santa Fe. Great town. Shout out to all my people in the city different. Love ya. See you soon. Anyway, Juan de Oñate has these new lands, but it's hard to get up there from where he is down in Chihuahua. There's the Chihuahuan desert between there and here, you know what I'm saying? So he sends his nephew, I think, out there, a guy named Saldivar, I believe, sends him up there to find a route, and sure enough, he finds a route. But when Oñate sets out on his own journey with 500 people and soldiers and thousands of livestock and this big wagon train, he's going to take this new and different route, it doesn't work out. And eventually they run out of food for like 5 days until they reach the Rio Grande near El Paso. And that is where they stop and meet, allegedly, with some native peoples of the area and have a Thanksgiving feast. I only know Juan Oñate from living briefly in New Mexico, and he's not very well liked. Google Juan de Oñate right foot for more gruesome information about the Spanish conquest of New Mexico. But there's an even earlier claim to the first Thanksgiving in Texas that may have included pecans. It was in 1541, and it was a journey by Francisco Vázquez de Coronado. Maybe you've heard of him. And he stopped in May 1541 in Palo Duro Canyon to celebrate a feast. Some people say it was the Feast of the Ascension. Some people say it was a special Thanksgiving for getting to where they were in their journey. Unclear. Some records say that they enjoyed pecans and grapes. And some people have said, well, They probably didn't, because that doesn't seem likely to have gotten to that spot in Texas at that time. But I mean, I don't know, man. Like, people could move pecans I mean, they could get pecans somewhere else. Here's another thing: they don't even know if it was Paladuro Canyon. It could have been farther south in Blanco Canyon or Blanco Canyon. I mean, the town is Blanco. Is the canyon Blanco? Anyway, a different canyon. So it could have been a place where pecans grew, but it also could have just been brought in. You know, like they brought those things in. And also, Mustang grapes grow in Texas. They probably grow up there, right? Am I losing my mind? Okay, listen, we've barely cracked the surface of the story of pecans. There's way more about the Pecan Shellers Union. And by the way, do you think it's coincidental that during the Great Depression, Karo syrup invents this new kind of pie that gets out there in the world to encourage people to use their syrup, but it also encourages people to use pecans. But also, this is when the pecan shellers get a bunch of work, and then they demand better working conditions. And then the company says, okay, maybe. Actually, no, that's too expensive. We're gonna get robots. And now everybody enjoys. I was expecting this to be more upbeat. Okay, all right, I'm sorry. We can rescue this. Okay, here's the thing. Pecans are delicious. They are a native food source that's extremely healthy, packs a really good nutritional punch. They're easy to grow, they're easy to eat, they're available around here, and they have a great tradition associated with them, a tradition of thankfulness, which I think is increasingly important in these, increasingly precedented times. So this year, let's all say thanks to the humble pecan. And I ran out of full pecans before the end. But let's give thanks to the humblest of pecans, the pecan sliver, for being just so nutty. Look at that guy. Happy Thanksgiving. This write-up from the University of the Incarnate Word, really good. Patricia Gower, Lauren Cabral, History of Karo Syrup. No, that's weird. Does that look familiar? And also this write-up. Thanks for this write-up from the New York Historical Society. We should be ashamed. I also used Texas sources. I'm just kidding. Speaking of sources, I'll put as many as I can down in the thing. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Find me on that other more short form video website. And I think I'm doing a weird thing to my microphone now. So happy Thanksgiving, everyone.